When was the last time you pretended something didn't hurt you? That ignored message, the compliment that never came, the exclusion you laughed off as if it didn't matter. But here's the paradox. The more you try to prove you're invulnerable, the more fragile you become. Because indifference isn't armor, it's a deactivated alarm. And while you pretend not to feel, someone is silently mapping all the doors you left open. But what if I told you that there is a kind of strength that doesn't come from hardening, but from strategic emotional intelligence? The same kind generals use in wars and philosophers use in revolutions. Sun Tzu knew this when he said, "Invincibility lies in defense, the possibility of victory in internal attack." Most try to appear strong, but those who only appear don't survive the battlefield of life. What is solid makes no noise. What is genuine doesn't need to prove anything. Pretending indifference is a failed strategy because it isolates you from the very information that could save you. When someone pretends to be invulnerable, they lose the ability to perceive where they are truly vulnerable. The rigidity of the mask creates invisible cracks that sooner or later are exploited. Many believe that hiding emotions is protecting themselves. But in a world where human relationships are subtle battlefields, those who disconnect from their own feelings also disconnect from the intuition that could foresee the next attack. Pretending not to feel is giving up your emotional intelligence, and without it, you become predictable, manipulable, exactly the opposite of what you wanted to be. Deep down, pretending you don't feel is handing over control of your fortress to the enemy. What have you been avoiding feeling? What pain have you been masking with pride or indifference? Maybe that's where the risk you're not seeing lies. It's tempting to believe we can become untouchable, to build a life so shielded that nothing and no one can ever reach us. But this is the greatest illusion ever sold to us, and one that, many times, we ourselves feed. Complete invulnerability is a fantasy because living inevitably means opening yourself to the unexpected. Life doesn't ask permission to change. Losses, betrayals, unforeseen events, all of these are part of the field where we are forged. And the more we try to deny this, the more fragile we become. Sun Tzu warns us precisely. True invincibility does not lie in never being attacked, but in building within yourself the ability to resist and react intelligently. Invincibility lies in defense, the possibility of victory in internal attack. This means that real strength is not the absence of risks, but the ability to move through them consciously. Believing in your own invulnerability creates two fatal side effects: arrogance and carelessness. When you believe nothing can touch you, you lower your guard to what you should be observing closely, and it's at that exact moment that the most precise blows find their way. Many build castles of certainty to avoid dealing with the fear of falling. But, as Machiavelli would say, true virtue lies not in avoiding chaos, but in learning to dance with it. What refuses to bend, breaks. What adapts, survives. Ask yourself, where in your life might you have fallen into the trap of feeling invulnerable? In which areas have you stopped observing, preparing, growing? Awareness of your own fragility does not weaken you, it strengthens you. Only those who recognize where they can be hurt are truly capable of protecting themselves. Few understand the real meaning of Sun Tzu's words. Many think they are only about military strategies or winning external conflicts. When Sun Tzu says that invincibility lies in defense and the possibility of victory in internal attack, he points to a truth few want to see. No one conquers the world without first conquering themselves. True defense is not made of walls, armor, or isolation. It is built internally, in the way we deal with our own thoughts, emotions, and impulses. The greatest threat to our stability rarely comes from the outside. It comes from the fear we don't face, the anger we accumulate, the desperate need for validation that makes us predictable. The internal attack, therefore, is the silent move of questioning your own beliefs, of facing your own flaws without backing down. It's investing energy in strengthening what is essential, in disarming the ego before it can be used against us. Imagine someone who has mastered their anger perfectly. They don't become indifferent or apathetic. On the contrary, they become free to act without being dragged by blind impulses. It's not the world that changes. It's the internal posture that changes the way the world affects them. Invincibility, therefore, is not an absolute state. It's a continuous practice, observing, adjusting, improving. It's realizing that every external battle is only a reflection of a battle already fought or neglected within. If you seek true security, ask yourself, where inside me am I most vulnerable? What can still be used against me? Where do my desires or fears make me predictable? Those who learn to defend themselves from within have already won the first and most important war. Most people see pain as an enemy, something to be avoided, silenced, forgotten as quickly as possible. But what Sun Tzu and Machiavelli knew, and what few have the courage to accept, is that suffering can be a source of strategic power. Pain is not weakness. Pain is information. It points to where you are still exposed, where there is still a lesson unlearned. Every discomfort, every emotional wound brings a map of your vulnerabilities and, at the same time, of your possibilities for growth. Sun Tzu saw preparation as the key to invincibility. To prepare is to observe, and nothing shows us more clearly where we need to strengthen ourselves than the experience of pain. Machiavelli, on the other hand, was even more direct. Adversity is the forge of virtue. There is no strength without trial. He knew that real power is not born from comfort, but from the ability to turn setbacks into springboards for evolution. Suffering is not a choice. What we do with suffering is. Those who treat pain as a message, not as a punishment, extract fuel from it to change, to anticipate future threats, to adjust their own path and build defenses that truly matter. Ask yourself, what is the pain you feel today trying to show you? Where is it pointing? What still needs to be observed, understood, integrated? Denying pain is remaining vulnerable. Listening to it is beginning to build a strength that does not depend on approval, stability, or the absence of conflict. It is moving toward a security that does not waver because it was born from the conscious recognition of one's own imperfection. Pain is the sentinel of evolution. Ignoring it is choosing stagnation. Machiavelli understood something that many still resist accepting. Life does not reward those who wait for the perfect moment. It favors those who can turn chaos into opportunity. In his best-known book, The Prince, Machiavelli speaks of virtù, not as moral goodness, but as strength of character, practical intelligence, and adaptability in the face of unpredictable fortune. Virtù is the ability to act with courage and cunning when fate turns adverse. It is the skill not only to survive, but to grow from discomfort. For Machiavelli, adversity was not an anomaly. It was the natural setting of human existence. Pretending that life will be fair is negligence. Real virtue lies in accepting the uneven terrain and learning to walk on it without illusions. He knew that the most dangerous individuals are those who have embraced their flaws, their limits, and their suffering. and used all of it as building material for themselves. Adversity, in this sense, is not an obstacle on the path. It is the path. Every betrayal, every loss, every disillusionment carries within it the potential for a new level of maturity. But this only happens for those who choose not to victimize themselves, who refuse paralysis and turn the impact of the fall into momentum to rise stronger. Think about the last difficulties you faced. Did you allow yourself to grow bitter because of them, or did you extract lessons that expanded your worldview? Did you retract or expand your capabilities? Machiavelli invites us to abandon the illusion that life should be easy and to embrace the kind of strength that blooms precisely in hardship. Because, in the end, what defines who remains standing is not who had the smoothest life, but who learned to dance in the storm. If there's something Sun Tzu and Machiavelli understood perfectly, it's that the greatest defeats begin from within. Before a castle falls, it has already been crumbling in its invisible foundations. External threats are easy to identify. They come with warnings, with flags, with clear signs. But internal wounds, these operate in silence. They shape decisions, distort perceptions, and slowly open breaches that the outside world will inevitably exploit. On the emotional battlefield, the real risk is not the attack from outside, but the sabotage that is born within. Unresolved anger, hidden fear, desperate need for approval. Each of these elements becomes a fragile line in your internal structure. Sun Tzu warned that winning 100 battles is not the greatest excellence. The greatest excellence is defeating the enemy without fighting. And the first enemy that must be defeated is the one hiding in your own shadows. When you ignore your wounds, when you pretend they don't exist, when you build walls instead of bridges within yourself, you become predictable and manipulable, because those who don't recognize their own pain inevitably project it onto the world, and by doing so, reveal exactly where they can be struck. Recognizing vulnerabilities is not exposing yourself to attack. It is strengthening the fragile parts before the world discovers them. It's like reinforcing the invisible walls that sustain your presence, your choices, your freedom. How many times have you felt that you overreacted to something seemingly small? How many times have you been hurt by situations that, rationally, shouldn't have weighed so heavily? These are clues, signs of unhealed wounds. Ignoring these wounds is walking through life with luminous signs pointing out your weak spots. Observing and treating them is learning to navigate the world without being a hostage to yourself. At some point, all of us have fallen into the temptation of believing that if we plan enough, if we manage every detail, we'll be able to control life. But this is one of the most dangerous traps. Sun Tzu teaches, "He who adapts wins." It's not those who try to dominate everything who prevail, but those who can move with the unpredictable flow of events. The obsessive desire for control creates tension, rigidity, blindness to what escapes our grasp. Yet real life is fluid, chaotic, full of variables that don't ask our permission to change. The insistence on control paradoxically generates more vulnerability because it traps us in fixed expectations. And what is rigid in the middle of a storm breaks. Machiavelli also understood this paradox. For him, flexibility was more powerful than rigidity. The ability to quickly adjust to circumstances, even the most adverse, was what separated the skillful ruler from the one destined for failure. True strength is not trying to shape the world to your will, but being able to reshape yourself to move through the world. It is like water that, faced with the stone, does not resist. It flows around, wears it down, transforms without losing its essence. How many times have you been paralyzed by the fear of losing control? How many times have you delayed important decisions, waiting for the perfect scenario? And what if the perfection you seek never comes precisely because the world, by nature, is imperfect? The art of invulnerability lies in accepting the uncontrollable, not as resignation, but as active wisdom, acting on what can be changed, releasing what cannot. Those who learn to move through chaos without losing their internal direction already carry within themselves a freedom that no one can steal. From an early age, we are taught that losing is failing. But the truth is that, for Sun Tzu and Machiavelli, losing, in the right way, was a strategic tool, not a sign of weakness. Knowing how to lose is an invisible power because it demands something few possess: the ability to let go of a wounded ego in the name of a greater victory in the future. Sun Tzu shows us that strategic retreat, calculated surrender, are often movements of pure intelligence. Sometimes, preserving forces is more important than winning an irrelevant battle. Sometimes, giving up space now is what allows you to conquer a much larger territory later. Machiavelli, in turn, understood that real power comes from the ability to choose your battles. He warned that the desire to appear strong at any cost often led leaders to ruin. The wise man, he said, is the one who accepts the necessary sacrifice without clinging to empty glories. In personal life, this translates into knowing when to let go of a toxic relationship, an ambition that has lost its meaning, an identity that no longer fits. Losing consciously is not being defeated. It is being the strategist of your own vital energy. How many times have you insisted on something just to avoid admitting defeat? How many times have you kept dead battles alive just out of pride? True strength lies in wisely choosing where to invest your time, your emotions, your life. It takes courage to say, "This is no longer worth it." Those who don't learn to lose properly end up losing in much more painful ways later. Deep down, life does not reward those who never fall. It rewards those who fall and know how to rise, lighter, clearer, stronger. Accepting strategic losses is what truly makes you untouchable. In many moments of life, seeking awareness means walking against the current. And everyone who decides to see more clearly inevitably distances themselves from the crowds. Sun Tzu knew the value of silence and invisible preparation. The most effective moves are those no one sees coming. The most lasting strength is built far from the applause, in the solitude of silent discipline. Machiavelli also recognized that real freedom comes at a high price: the ability to walk alone. When you commit to the truth, when you refuse the comfortable illusions that most choose, solitude becomes an inevitable consequence. This is not about bitter loneliness, rejection, or forced isolation. It's about strategic solitude, the internal space necessary to think independently, to strengthen your own foundation, to avoid being carried by the winds of others' opinions. How many times have you felt that, by changing your way of seeing the world, you lost connections that once seemed essential? How many times have you had to choose between belonging to a group and being true to yourself? This is the dilemma of those who awaken, and it's not a mistake along the way, it's part of the process. Strategic solitude allows you to hear your own voice without external interference. It allows you to better observe the movements around you and decide more precisely which alliances are worth making and which are best abandoned. It is in solitude that you learn to trust your own perception, where you hone patience, long-term vision, and strength that does not depend on approval. Accepting this solitary path also means accepting the freedom of not being a hostage to narratives, expectations, or trends. It means accepting that true invulnerability is born from an unbreakable commitment to your own awareness. Those who do not fear being alone do not fear losing, and those who do not fear losing have already won. In the end, nothing and no one will be able to hurt you if your fortress is built where the world cannot reach, inside yourself. Sun Tzu and Machiavelli remind us that true protection does not lie in raising walls, but in mastering the invisible terrain of the mind and spirit. Being invincible is not about never falling. It's about falling consciously and rising more lucid. It's about accepting pain as a teacher, about turning losses into strategy, about letting go of the illusion of control and embracing the fluidity of life with watchful eyes. If you truly want to be free, do not seek external guarantees. Seek internal clarity. Take moments of silence to observe your own patterns. Write down your most intense reactions. Ask yourself every day, where am I still deceiving myself? And above all, have the courage to walk alone if necessary, because those who build their strength in the invisible carry an armor that nothing can penetrate. If you enjoyed this content and want to understand more about life's questions, subscribe to the channel and share this video with those who are also among the awakened.